Okay, well, starting off from where I finished off last time, which was at 107, and I'm going to start off with Socrates. Accordingly, excuse me. Accordingly, then, the soul, or OCVs, is most certainly immortal or deathless, and indestructible, and our souls will really dwell in the realm of the unseen, or Hades. I, at least, no longer thus have anything else to say against that, O Socrates, nor can I in any way distrust the Logos, or reasoning. But if indeed Simmias, or someone else, has something else to say, it would be well that they should not keep silent, as I do not see to what further opportunity, other than the one now present, they could put it off, if they wish to say or to hear anything on these subjects. But truly neither do I in any way distrust from the Logos that was spoken. Nevertheless, in view of the high importance of the subject which is under discussion, and my low valuation of human frailty, I am bound to still have distrust on behalf of my own self concerning what has been said. Not only that, O Simmias, but also the first hypotheses do indeed still require clearer examination, if they are also to be trustworthy to us, and if you also thoroughly discuss them in a sufficient way, as it appears to me, you will follow the Logos as far as a man is able to do so, and if itself becomes clear, you will seek no further. You speak the truth. But it is indeed just to bear in mind the following, O virile ones. Think Andress there could be, O courageous ones. That if the soul is immortal, she truly needs our care, not only for the sake of this time, which we call life, but for the sake of all time, and that the danger should now truly also appear to be terrible, if one does not give that care to self, or to the soul. Here, self, autes, refers to the soul. So, 7b, if soul, immortal, then required care in what he calls life, and life, but for the sake of all time, and that the danger should now truly also appear to be terrible, if one does not give that care to the soul. For if on the one hand, death were an escape from all, then dying would be a windfall for the wicked, to be freed of the body, and at the same time of their wickedness along with their soul. But since she has now come to light being immortal, there will be no other escape from her. I don't know what that self refers to here. No other escape from, nor from vice, except the salvation of becoming as good and as mindful as possible. Let me check my other translation for that 107b. There is no escape from evil. It says, but now that the soul appears to be immortal, there is no escape from evil or salvation for it except by becoming as good and wise as possible. For the soul goes to the realm of the invisible, or Hades, possessing nothing else except her education and nurture. So, soul goes to Hades, with nothing else except her education and nurture. Which are truly said to greatly benefit or also harm the dead from the very beginning of the journey in that place yonder. Whereas we are told in this way that accordingly, when each person dies, the guiding spirit, which is daimon in Greek, of each soul which was allotted to them while living, this spirit tries to lead them to a place, to the unseen, where those who have been gathered together after being judged must proceed with that guide who has been appointed to lead them there from here. So then on death, well, it's the soul, and it's gonna go with a daimon, which is translated here as guiding spirit. And so this spirit tries to lead them to a place, to the unseen, which is going to Hades, where those who have been gathered together after being judged must proceed with that guide who has been appointed to lead them there from here. But there, having undergone that which they must undergo, and stayed there the appointed time, another guide leads them back safely here after many and long-lasting periods of time. I wonder if that means back to normal life. In the other translation, it says, the guardian spirit who was allotted to him in life proceeds to lead him to a certain place whence those who have been gathered together there must, after being judged, proceed to the underworld, with the guide who has been appointed to lead them thither from here. Having there undergone what they must and stayed there the appointed time, they are led back here by another guide after long periods of time. I'm not sure how many guides there are or where they're going. So you've got the guiding spirit of the soul, which leads them to a place, to the unseen, so it leads them to Hades, where those who have been gathered after being judged. So what does a gathering here of souls? So what, you get judgment first, then you get the gathering, and then after being judged must proceed with that guide, with the daimon, or must proceed with that guide who has been appointed to lead them there from here. But there, having undergone that which they must undergo, and stayed there the appointed time, another guide leads them back safely here after many and long-lasting periods of time. Well, I'm not sure what happens here. I'm wondering if it's a return here after a long period of time. But the journey, on the one hand, is thus not as Aeschylus's Telephos says, for he says that it is one single path which leads to the unseen place, but on the other hand, it has come to light for me to be neither simple nor one. For then there would be no need of guides. Okay, so this one here is like guide. Therefore, not a simple route or way. For then there would be no need of guides, for there would be no way anyone could miss the mark if there existed only one path. But now it appears likely to have many branches and circuits, and I report this from the sacred rites and the sure signs of the common laws here. I'm not sure. The sacred rites and the sure signs of the common laws. It's in the other translation. Right. And I base this judgment on the sacred rites and customs here. Okay, so common laws meaning customs. In any case. Thus, on the one hand, the well-ordered and mindful soul follows its guide and is not ignorant of her present circumstances. Whereas on the other hand, the soul that is passionately attached to the body, as I said before, fearfully flutters around that and around the visible place. So there's two types of soul. There's one direct to Hades, following Daemon, and the other way would be attached body. Fearfully flutters around that and around the visible place. So this is Hades here. Unseen. And this is life. Visible. And this is the threshold of their fear. Okay. So fearfully flutters around that and around the visible place for a long time, struggling much and suffering much, being led away by force and with difficulty by her appointed spirit. So then you have the daemon, taken by force. But when she arrives at the place where the others are, the impure soul which has committed an unjust act, such as either taking hand in unjust slaughter or traffics in such crimes, which are akin to these, and which are the activities of souls which happen to be akin to such activities. This soul, on the one hand, is avoided and turned away by all, and are neither willing to be her fellow traveller or guide. Thus, on the other hand, such a soul keeps wandering, completely at a loss, until a certain time should arrive, indeed, which having come to its completion, she is borne by necessity to her proper habitation. So, avoided and turned away by all. So once in Hades, this one here, B, is avoided, turned away, and are neither willing to be her fellow traveller or guide. No guide, no fellow traveller. Thus, on the other hand, such a soul keeps wandering, completely at a loss, until a certain time should arrive indeed, which having come to its completion, she is borne by necessity to her proper habitation. So here there's more wandering, and then born. This will be, and the life and outside of the death. So born to proper habitation. So A would be the well-ordered and mindful. So this is well-ordered. And the word for that is cosmia, which is like the word for cosmos or cosmetics. It means well-ordered. And, or well-adorned or something like that. And mindful. Is that phronimos? So it's the same as friend, which means mind. So well-ordered and mindful. So we're here where this, the one that's the soul that's attached to the body, eventually, after much wandering, is born by necessity to her proper habitation. But the soul that has completed life in a pure and measured way meets with the gods as fellow travellers and leaders. So here, meets with as fellow travellers and leaders. And each soul soon arrives at its own proper place. But there are many and wonderful habitations belonging to the earth, and this is neither as it is supposed to be by those who are used to talk about the earth in regards to her nature, nor her size, as I have been persuaded by someone. That doesn't make sense. Let's try it on. In the other translation I have, there are many strange places upon the earth, and the earth itself is not such as those who are used to discourse upon it believe it to be in nature or size, as someone has convinced me. I don't know why he's bringing that in there. So the earth is not as it seems. What do you mean by this, O Socrates? For I myself have surely also heard much said about the earth, however, not this which has convinced you. Thus I will be glad to hear it. Then in that case, O Simia, it does not indeed appear to me to take the art of Glaucus to set out in detail what is said. However, as to prove their truth, it has come to light for me to be more difficult than that art of Glaucus. And on the one hand, at the same time, I may equally not be able to do so. But also, on the other hand, even if I had the knowledge, it appears to me that my life, O Simmias, may not be sufficiently long enough to tell the logos, or discourse, or account. But nothing prevents me from telling what I am convinced is the idea of the earth and her regions. Right, so now we're moving on to basically just before 108e, the idea of earth and her regions. In my other translation, it says, however, nothing prevents my telling you what I am convinced is the shape of the earth and what its regions are. So why have we got one translation says idea, the other one says shape? Well, the word is idean, therefore. Okay. But even that is sufficient. Now then, I am convinced that in the first place, if the earth is a sphere, being in the middle of heaven, so sphere, earth, in the middle of heaven, then it has no need either of air or any other necessary element such as this to keep it from not falling, since the overall likeness of it, of the self of heaven itself in relation to it, and the equal balance in these cells make it difficult to read, are sufficient to maintain it for an equally balanced resource placed in the middle of something homogeneous or like, will have no tendency to incline either more or less in any direction, but will continue to remain uninclined and in the same way. Right? Think only the other translation. That's difficult to read. Okay. So, 109. Well then, he said, the first thing of which I am convinced is that if the earth is a sphere in the middle of the heavens, it has no need of air or any other force to prevent it from falling. The homogeneous nature of the heavens on all sides and the earth's own equipoise are sufficient to hold it. For an object balanced in the middle of something homogeneous will have no tendency to incline more in any direction than any other, but will remain unmoved. This, he said, is the first point of which I am persuaded. Well, I'm not sure what equipoise, but I think I get the point about homogeneous. So, if this substance here, which makes up the heavens, or heaven, this is homogeneous, or like, and because it's all alike, there's no force, therefore, no force on earth in any direction. Because it says the homogeneous nature of the heavens on all sides and the earth's own equipoise. A state of balance or equilibrium. Balance, equilibrium. And then we just check homogeneous as well, just so I'm sure I know what that means. Of the same kind, alike, similar. Same kind. Okay. Let's see this translation again. Now then, I am convinced that in the first place, if the earth is a sphere, being in the middle of heaven, then it has no need either of air or any other necessary element such as this to keep it from not falling, since the overall likeness of heaven itself in relation to it and the equal balance of heaven of earth itself and the equal balance of earth itself are sufficient to maintain it for an equally balanced. Oh, right, so earth itself is equally balanced, right? Therefore, it doesn't tend in any direction. Doesn't. So it is not a mover, and the heaven as the container does not move it. So earth does not move, and heaven does not move earth. Balanced and alike. So it says that since the overall likeness of heaven itself in relation to the earth and the equal balance of earth itself are sufficient to maintain it, for an equally balanced resource placed in the middle of something homogeneous or alike will have no tendency to incline either more or less in any direction, but will continue to remain uninclined and in the same way. So it remains, and also they have this word uninclined. Uninclined, I think like I am inclined to, maybe like tendency. Although tendency to incline. Clithenai and acliness. Clithenai. Clino. Clino. To bend, slant. That must be it. It means to bend, slant, lean, prop, cause to be break, cause to retreat, turn aside to decline, wane to seat, cause to lie down. From clay, lean, lean slope incline. This, therefore, on the one hand, is the first point of which I am persuaded, and rightly so indeed. Secondly, then, any region of Earth itself is very large. Okay. Should carry on about Earth. Large. And we live as far as the pillars of Heracles and up to the river Phasis, the boundary of Europe and Asia. And we live as far as the pillars of Heracles and up to the river Phasis within a small section. So there's the pillars of Heracles. I have a feeling that's Gibraltar, I'm not sure. This is a small section. And the river Phasis. Well, let's see if I can find those. Modern day Brioni River in western Georgia. I wonder if there's that. Caucasus Mountains. The ancient Phasis. Black Sea coast. Known to the ancient Greeks as the Phasis River. Brioni was first mentioned by Hesiod in his Theogony. Plato has Socrates remark, I believe that the earth is very large and that we who dwell between the pillars of Hercules and the river Phasis live in a small part of it about the sea, like ants or frogs about a pond. Alright, so we are talking about the right one. So where is it? Okay, it's the banks of the Black Sea. So it must be here somewhere. I think this must be it. From the Caucasus. What's it called? Brioni? Brioni. Yeah. So from there, and I think the pillars of Hercules are here. They'll say pillars of Hercules. Was the phrase that was applied in antiquity to the promontories that flank the entrance to the Strait of Gibraltar. The northern pillar, Calpe Mons, is the rock of Gibraltar. Yeah. Okay. So we live as far as the pillars of Heracles and up to the river Phasis, Phazidos, the boundary of Europe and Asia, within a small section, living around the Mediterranean Sea. living around the Mediterranean Sea. Just as ants or frogs live around a pool, and many other people live in many such sections in this region. For there are many valleys in every direction around the earth. Oh, well, that's a good point. So earlier he said the earth was a sphere. Which I didn't know yet, for sure. I don't think totally. So that's quite good. For there are many valleys in every direction around the earth, of every kind and shape and size, into which water and mist and air have flowed together. But the earth itself, by being pure, is laid up in the pure heaven, where the stars are established, which the majority of those who usually speak about these subjects truly call the ether. So the earth itself, by being pure, is laid up in the pure heaven, where the stars are established, which the majority of those who usually speak about these subjects truly call the ether. Ether. So this here. The ether, where stars are established. Surely then, these are the sediment thereof, and they always flow into the valleys of the earth. You mean this bit here, the water and mist and air have flowed together. There are many valleys in every direction around the earth, of every kind and shape and size, into which water and mist and air have flowed together. But the earth itself, by being pure, is laid up in the pure heaven, where the stars are established, which the majority of those who usually speak about these subjects truly call the ether. Surely then these are the sediment thereof, and they always flow into the valleys of the earth. What are these sediment? The stars, or the mist and air? Here's 109c. The earth itself, the other translation of what says, the earth itself is pure and lies in the pure sky where the stars are situated, which the majority of those who discourse on these subjects call the ether. The water and mist and air are the sediment of the ether, and they always flow into the hollows of the earth. Sediment. I'm not sure what sediment means, so let me just quickly look it up. Sediment, a collection of small particles, particularly dirt, that precipitates from a river or other body of water. Does this mean that we're all made of stardust? Is that basically Plato's way of saying that? Because it says the majority of those who usually speak about these subjects truly call the ether. Surely then these are the sediment thereof. And in this other translation, 9c. The water and mist and air are the sediment of the ether, and they always flow into the hollows of the earth. I wonder if this has ether as well. For Middle English, ether of ancient cosmology in which the planets orbit, a shining fluid substance described as a form of air or fire. From Itho, to burn, ignite, to blaze or to shine. Burn, ignite, blaze, shine. Which is why it makes sense that it's associated with the stars. Well, it's pretty incredible what he's saying in this bit here, bearing in mind when it was written. In any case, surely then these are the sediment thereof, and they always flow into the valleys of the earth. Therefore, we who dwell in her valleys are unaware of this, and we think that we live above, upon the earth, just as if someone who would be living at the bottom, in the middle of the open sea, would think that they were living upon the surface of the sea, and by seeing the sun and the other heavenly bodies through the water, would believe the sea to be the heavens. Okay. So, we live on the earth here, and then you have the stars here. Okay. And it says, we who dwell in the valleys are unaware of this, and we think that we live above, upon the earth. So here we think we live above. Just as if someone who would be living at the bottom, in the middle of the open sea. Okay. So then you got someone here living here. Would think that they were living upon the surface of the sea, living at the bottom, in the middle of the open sea. In the middle of the open sea, would think they were living upon the surface of the sea. And by seeing the sun and the other heavenly bodies through the water, would believe, right, okay, so you're still seeing the sun and heavenly bodies. Would think that they were living upon the surface sea, and by seeing the sun and the other heavenly bodies through the water, would believe the sea to be the heavens. Right, so what there's another layer here. This is the heavens. This is earth. And this is sea. And so we think, what? I don't get the point. Therefore, we who dwell in her valleys are unaware of this, and we think that we live above, upon the earth, just as if above what? I don't think anyone thinks they live in the heavens, though. Just as if someone who would be living at the bottom in the middle of the open sea would think they were living upon the surface of the sea. By seeing the sun through the water, we believe the sea to be the heavens. So what do we believe to be the heavens? The sky? Is it the sky? And this is like the true heavens. Maybe. I'll just check the other translation just in case. We who dwell in the hollows of it are unaware of this, and we think that we live above, on the surface of the earth. It is as if someone who lived deep down in the middle of the ocean thought he was living on its surface. Seeing the sun and the other heavenly bodies through the water, he would think the sea to be the sky. Because he is slow and weak, he has never reached the surface of the sea or risen with his head above the water, or come out of the sea to our regions here, nor seen how much purer and more beautiful it is than his own region, nor has he ever heard of it from anyone who has seen it. That's the whole lot there. Yeah, I think this is pretty much it. Like, you don't know what the heavens are really like by seeing it through the atmosphere. Just like this person here wouldn't know what it would be like to be on Earth, viewing it through the sea. But by being slow and frail, they will never arrive upon the surface of the sea, and by lifting their head out of the sea, nor have they beheld the sight of the region here, which compared to theirs happens to be much more pure and much more beautiful. So is there a basic progression in purity and beauty as you go through these different layers? Nor would they have heard of it from anyone else, from anyone who has seen it. I am convinced our experience is truly also the same as this, for by living in a certain valley of the earth, we think that we live upon her upper region, and we call the air heaven, as if the stars made their journey through this heaven. Right, okay. So it is atmosphere or air. Right, let's get this. We call this air or sky, atmosphere. We call that called heaven. But heaven, but true heaven is higher still. We think that we live upon her upper region, and we call the air heaven, as if the stars made their journey through this heaven. Yeah, not the abode of stars. This then is the same. Because of our weakness and slowness, it is not possible for us to completely pass through to the upper limit of the air. And if ever one would arrive to this upper limit, or fly up by becoming winged, by lifting their head above the air, they would behold, just as here, fish would see on rising from the sea things here. In the same way they would behold something of the realities there, and if their nature were efficient enough to keep them contemplating them, they would realize that there truly is that heaven, and there truly is that light, just as there truly is that earth. So it's the weakness and slowness that means it's not possible. So the weak also impedes ascent. Same here. And if their nature were efficient enough to keep contemplating them, they would realize that there truly is that heaven, and that there truly is that light, just as there truly is that earth. For on the one hand, this earth and these stones and this whole region here are corruptible and are being thoroughly eaten away, just as things in the sea are by the salt water. And nothing worth mentioning grows in the sea, or, as one might say, nothing that is perfect. But on the other hand, there are caves and sand and an extraordinary amount of slime and mud, wherever there should be earth also, and being in no way whatsoever worthy of comparison with our beauties. But those realities, in their turn, will appear still far more superior compared to our region. And if there is further need to tell a tale, O Simmias, for it is worth hearing, which happens to be about the realities upon the upper earth, under the upper heaven. But truly, O Socrates, we will indeed be pleased to hear of this tale. Right, so there's higher perfection, I think. That point was already made. Purity, beauty, perfection. And superior. But truly, O Socrates, we will indeed be pleased to hear of this tale. Now then, O companion, in the first place, it is said about the earth itself, if one beheld her from above, they would see something just like those spherical, multicolored, 12-sided leather balls, and of which colors? Oh, that's pretty amazing. That's describing the view from a spaceship looking back down on Earth. It would be, one beheld her from above, they would see something just like those spherical, multicolored, 12-sided leather balls. That's incredible. So if you were here from above, you'd look down on something that had, different regions. Obviously those colours would be different according to the colours of what would be on the Earth's surface, but the point's the same. The colours here which our painters use to colour are truly just a sample, since up there the whole earth is artfully wrought out of such colours, but still wrought out of much more brighter and purer colours than these. For on the one hand, the sea purple also has a marvellous beauty, whereas the golden, then another of such a white, whiter than chalk or snow, and in the same way she is wrought out of the other colours, even still more numerous and beautiful than any we have seen. For such valleys themselves of earth are full of water and air, that sparkle among the variety of all the other colours, that presents a certain ideal colour, so that the ideal of earth appears in a continuous variety. Then the plants that grow in this earth, such as the trees and the flowers and their fruits, grow in an analogous beautiful way, and in turn, so also do the hills and the stones possess the same corresponding beautiful colour, but they are also smooth and transparent, and of which the precious stones here are blue-grey quartz and green quartz, and our emeralds, and all the rest of these are scarcely but fragments of those. But there not one stone exists which is not of that kind, and even more beautiful than these here, since the cause of this is that there the stones are pure and not subject to decomposition, nor to corruption by decay and brine. Okay, well, what he wouldn't have known is, I wonder what he's calling the heavens here, because as you get higher, we now know that this is space, where the stars are in, and yet there is still decay and decomposition. But the general point is that as you move up, there is less decay, less decomposition, and I wonder if it's also becoming more abstract as you move up. So you're no longer talking about matter at some point, and more of the idea of Hades and the unseen and the realm of the ideas. But that's just me wondering if that's the case, and having the advantage of knowing that obviously space is still very similar to Earth in the way that things would still undergo similar processes there. While this seems to speak of a realm or region where those processes will occur, because it says the stones there are pure and not subject to decomposition, nor to corruption by decay and brine, just as those here have indeed been subject to breakdown up to now, which also bring deformity and disease upon the stones, earth, and the other animals and plants. But the earth itself has been adorned with all these, and also with gold and silver, and moreover other metals such as these, for she is revealed by nature as being broad-breasted and overflowing and massive and present everywhere, so that the idea of the earth itself is a spectacle for the sight of the blessed. And there are many other living beings and humans upon it. Some on the one hand live inland, but others at the edge of the air, just as we live at the edge of the sea. Then others live on islands which are close to the mainland, which is surrounded by the air. In a word, the very thing that water and the sea is to us for our use, this, that air is to them, and the ether is to them, just as the air is to us. Then her climate is such as to be entirely controlled, so that they live without disease, and live much longer than we do here. So also for their eyesight, and hearing, and mindfulness. And all such senses. For that self is as far removed from ours in purity as the distance that air is removed from water and ether from air. So we've got air removed from water and ether from air, so sort of like progression. And they truly also have groves and temples of the gods, in which gods really dwell, and they come to be in communion with the gods and with the godlike selves by speech and inspiration and by perception. So he's definitely, I think he's describing like the perfect realm. And that here you would be able to be in communion with the gods. So is this Hades in communion with the gods by speech? Is that famous? Inspiration, fantaeus, fantasy. And by perception, aesthesis. And indeed they see the sun and moon and stars, just as they so happen to be themselves. Their blessedness is also in accordance with them in other ways. Surely then, this thing, on the one hand, is the nature of the whole earth and of her surroundings, whereas on the other hand, in the whole itself, There are many regions that are determined by the valleys encircling inside Earth. On the one hand, some are deeper and open wide, even more than those in which we live. On the other hand, others being deeper have a narrower expanse than ours when compared to those in our region. And furthermore, there are some shallower in depth, but are wider than those here. And all these valleys are connected with each other below the earth by narrower and broader channels, which have been dug out in many places, through which on the one hand much water flows from one valley into another, just as if flowing into mixing bowls, and countless great rivers of both hot and cold water flow beneath the earth perpetually, but on the other hand so does much fire and great rivers of fire, and also many mud flows, both purer and fouler, just as in Sicily the flowing rivers of mud flow in advance of the flowing river of lava itself, which flows truly fill up every region, as each flow happens to reach each of the regions. Thus all these regions flow up and down, just as if being in some kind of fluctuation inside the earth. Nice. Well, that would describe the movement of the tectonic plates as well. Accordingly then, the nature of this flux is such as follows. In one of the wide expanses of the earth, which happens to be far more the greatest, and also pierces through the whole earth, it is the very one which Homer mentioned when he said, "Far down beneath the nether region, where the deepest pit is," from the Iliad, and which he elsewhere, and many other poets also, call that region Tartarus. So now we have deepest pit. Tartarus. Again, I don't know in what sense he's talking, because in one sense this is describing the reality of our world, but because it's increasing in perfection, it becomes more abstract as you go higher up. Hence, why he can talk about things not being subject to decay. Now, as he's describing going down to the deepest pit, I don't know if he believes that is in Earth, or again as an abstract place or a mythological place. So, I wonder. But he does say something. He might believe that this actually is located in the Earth, because he says, in one of the wide expanses of the Earth, which happens to be far more the greatest, and also pierces through the whole Earth. And that's definitely not the case. We don't have something that pierces through the whole Earth. If he's talking about the Earth planet. Rather than Earth, one of the elements. What does the other translation say here? In this translation, just before 112, it says, one of the hollows of the earth, which is also the biggest, pierces through the whole earth. It is that which Homer mentioned when he said, far down where is the deepest pit below the earth, and which he elsewhere and many other poets called Tartarus. Into this chasm all the rivers flow together. So let's carry on. And which he elsewhere and many other poets also call that region Tartarus. For into this expanse all the rivers flow together, and again flow out of it. Thus each of these rivers also becomes affected by the nature of the earth through which it may flow, since the cause for all of their flowing into and out of this place is that this flow has neither foundation nor firmament. What does that mean? So you have things that are flowing. It has no foundation or firmament. In the other translation, the reason for their flowing into and out of Tartarus is that this water has no bottom or solid base, but it oscillates up and down in waves. Let's say water rather than flows of magma or whatever. In any case, and surely then it fluctuates, swelling up and down, and the air and wind about it do the same, for they also follow the flow to it when it is impelled to this and to that part of the earth. And just as the breath of those who breathe, the flow of air always goes in and out, so also there the airflow is suspended together with the liquid flow and produces some terrible and irresistible winds as it goes in and out. Thus, whenever the water withdraws to what we indeed call the lower region, the flow flows through those parts of the earth and fills them up as if the water was being pumped in, and when in turn it leaves behind that place, it is then impelled here, filling these regions again, and the valleys having been filled, it flows through the channels and through the earth, and in each case arrive at the regions into which each of the channels lead, creating seas and marshes and rivers and springs. But from there plunging under the earth again, and on the one hand some flow around larger and more numerous regions, and on the other hand others flow around less numerous and smaller regions, then rush back again into Tartarus, some at a point much lower than where they issued forth, but others only a little lower, but all flowing below the outfall. Some of them flow straight down from where they flowed out, but others flow to the same side. Then those which flow round the earth completely in a circle, either once or many times, are like snakes winding round as far down as possible, then one by one brush back again. Thus it is possible to flow down from each side as far as the centre, but not beyond, for that part of the river flows becomes steep from both sides. Thus there are certainly many other large flows of all kinds, but then among these many flows there happen to be 4 of note. The greatest, which flows on the outside in a circle, is called Oceanus, But opposite to this and flowing opposite direction is Acheron, which means untamed, Acheron, which flows through other desolate regions and truly also flows under the earth, makes its way to the Acherusian wetlands, and in which the souls of the majority end up after death. And remain there for a certain allotted time that is greater for some, lesser for others. They are sent back again to be born as living creatures. So, there's a whole section about flow. And then he's talking, there are certainly many other large flows of all kinds, but then these many flows that happen to be four of note. Four noteworthy flows. Oceanus, Acheron, and this one flows through other desolate regions and truly also flows under the earth, makes its way to the Acherusian wetlands, in which the souls of the majority end up after death, and remain there for a certain allotted time that is greater for some, lesser for others. And right, so the third river issues forth in between these, and close to its source it comes out to a large region burning with much fire, and creates a comparatively larger wetland than our sea, boiling with water and mud. Then from there it moves in a circle, foul and muddy, winding on its way. It then arrives, among other places, to the end of the Acherusian wetlands, not mixing with its waters. Then coiling many times under the earth, further down it flows into Tartarus. And this flow is named Periphlagathon. Periphlagathon. Then this flow is named Periphlagathon, blazing fire, and whose streams burst forth from the earth as volcanic eruptions in many places. Then in turn, in opposite direction to this, the fourth river first issues forth into a terrible and wild region, as the whole region is said to have the dark blue kind of colour, which is truly named Stygian, abhorrent, and the wetland which this river creates by flowing into this region is called Styx or Stuga. Stygian, Stuga. Flowing into this wetland also acquire dread powers, sink under the earth, winding round it moves in the opposite direction to the Periphlagathon, and in every way opposite from the Acherusian wetland, and neither do its waters mix with any other, but this river also flows round in a circle opposite to the Periphlagathon, flowing into Tartarus. Thus, as the poets tell us, the name of this same fourth river is Kokutos, wailing. This one is blazing fire. Therefore, such is the nature of these matters. When the dead arrive at the region to which each has been attended by their guiding spirit, they are on the one hand first judged. Right, so this is on death. We've got the soul and the guiding spirit. Right. And they arrive first judged. That's based on good, highest life. And those who shall be seen to have lived an average life are taken to the Acheron. Right, so one lot average. To the Acheron. Embarking such vehicles as there are for them. Upon these they are taken to the wetland, and if anyone did any wrongdoing, there they live, and being purified, upon these they are taken to the wetland, taken to the Acheron, and parking such vehicles as there are for them. Upon these they are taken to the wetland, and if anyone did any wrongdoing, there they live. So this is the destination for wrongdoers. There they live, and being purified of the injustice they have committed, they are justly determined to be released, and are justly rewarded for their good works according to the worthiness of each one. Whereas, on the other hand, those who are deemed incurable because of the enormity of their crimes, who have either committed many great sacrileges, or many beyond lawless and unjust murders, or did other deeds such as these, thus their proper fate is to be cast into Tartarus. These were the average. Then we got the bad. These go to Tartarus. From which they never emerge. But those who are seen to have wrongfully committed curable but great crimes, such as doing some violence to their father or mother in a fit of rage, but have passed the rest of their life being repentant, or those who engaged in killing someone in another similar manner, these then must necessarily be carried into Tartarus first. But then, when a year passes, the waves push them out of there again. Those, on the one hand, who are guilty of murder by way of kokutos, and those, on the other hand, who have committed patricide or matricide by way of puriphlegethonta. Then, after they've been carried along to the Acheron wetland, here they cry out and call, some to those which they killed, others to those which they abused, and calling them, they also beseech them to please allow them to step out into the wetland, and to accept them. And on the one hand, if they persuade them, they step out, and their wrongdoing comes to an end. But then, if they do not persuade them, they are carried back again into Tartarus, and from there in turn into the other rivers. And this continues without stopping, sooner until they have persuaded those they have wronged. Let me just do that bit again. And this continues without stopping, sooner until they shall have persuaded those they have wronged. For this is the judgment which the judges impose upon them. But those on the other hand, who shall truly be seen to have lived life in a supremely pious way, these very ones are given freedom and are liberated. These very ones are given freedom and are liberated, on the one hand from the inner regions of the earth, as if from prisons, and on the other hand, arriving above at the pure habitation, they make their home upon the earth. So these are the pious ones. Let me look at the other translation. Those who are deemed to have lived an extremely pious life are freed and released from the regions of the earth, as from a prison. They make their way up to a pure dwelling place and live on the surface of the earth. Those who have purified themselves sufficiently by philosophy live in the future altogether without a body. So these very ones, the pious ones, are given freedom and are liberated, on the one hand from the inner regions of the earth, as if from prisons, and on the other hand, arriving above at the pure habitation, they make their home upon the earth. Then those who have purified them sufficiently by philosophy, and from that time hence, will live altogether without a body, and they will arrive at even more beautiful habitations. And so from that time hence, those who have purified themselves sufficiently by philosophy will from that time hence live altogether without a body. So purified sufficiently by philosophy. Those who live without body. And they will arrive at even more beautiful habitations. they will arrive at even more beautiful habitations, which is neither easy to describe clearly, nor do we now have sufficient time to do so. But truly, O Simmias, for the sake of these matters which we necessarily have gone through in detail, make every effort so as to participate of virtue and mindfulness during your life. So, but truly, O Simmias, for the sake of these matters which you necessarily this is 114C. It is the same as truly, O Simmias, for the sake of these matters which we necessarily have gone through in detail, make every effort so as to participate of mindfulness, of virtue and mindfulness. So make every effort. Make every effort so as to participate of virtue, which is aretes, and mindfulness, which is phronesis. During your life. For the prize is beautiful, and the hope is great. Thus, on the one hand, it is not proper for a person who participates of intellect to insist that these matters have to literally be in this way, just as I have described them. Alright, so if you participate in intellect, so a quantity noun, I wonder what the etymology of the actual word noun is. Because you have nous, which is one way of saying mind, like friend is another way of saying mind. But here it's written known, which is similar to this word noun. That'd be interesting, but not for now. Participate in intellect. To insist these matters have to literally be in this way. If you participate, then you don't need to take it literally. Just as I've described them, which is good because earlier on, all these things seem to become more abstract. That's this bit here. So that's quite useful. You have this section here, 114D. Don't take literally. Because it's the concepts that make more sense. And the concept of going towards a higher or towards a lower. So it is not proper for a person who participates in intellect to insist that these matters have to literally be in this way, just as I have described them. But this appears to me to be proper and worthy to risk the belief that it has to be in this way, for the risk is a noble one. So now we have the noble risk. And it has something to do with belief. So this appears to me to be proper, propane, and worthy axiom to risk belief or your mental. I think that's belief, but it's underneath there. Let's just see. Oiomenos. Oiomai. To hope, fear, expect. To suppose. Suppose. Expect. Imagine. Okay, so that's that one. So where was risk? The risk. Cook, donos. Cook, keep, do. So there you have risk. And that is keep, donos. Which is danger, risk, high hazard. So it's etymology out of interest. The connection with King. Oh, so it's not kick, it's King Bulos. Yes, sorry. King Bulos. King. Okay, so then, what's it say? connection with King Dax, quick, nimble, Arno Dios, donkey driver, so attractive. The semantics compare solicitous, agitated, disturbed, which is from solace, whole entire, plus zero, move, stir, shake. Right, okay, well, in any case it means risk. And so then, this appears to me to be proper and worthy to risk the belief that it has to be in this way, for the risk is a noble one, noble chaos. That either this or something like this is certainly the case about our souls. So this is all related to the account of souls. And their habitations. So that either this or something like this is certainly the case about our souls and their habitations, seeing that the soul is evidently immortal, and that it is necessarily befitting to sing such myths to them, just as if they were an incantation. But surely then, on which account, I at least have just now been prolonging the tale. So he's been prolonging the tale because he's singing such myths. I think incantation. Well, he did say at the beginning that he was writing either poetry or setting poetry to music or something like that. Setting. And a man should repeat. This is the other translation I got, the same bit. It says, no sensible man would insist that these things are as I have described them. Would insist that these things are as I have described them. But I think it is fitting for a man to risk the belief, for the risk is a noble one, that this or something like this is true about our souls and their dwelling places, since the soul is evidently immortal, and the man should repeat this to himself as if it were an incantation. Which is why I have been prolonging my tale. So repeat to yourself like an incantation. Repeat. Repeat. Make an incantation. And that's why Socrates longs the tale. Or because I think it's Phaedo that's recounting it, so too does Phaedo. Okay, back to the text. So So seeing that the soul is evidently mortal, and that it is necessarily befitting to sing such myths to themselves, just as if they were an incantation, and surely then, on which account I at least have just now been prolonging the tale, since surely then, for the sake of those matters, it is necessarily befitting for mankind to be of good cheer in regards to their own soul. Whosoever in this life, on the one hand, ignores the other pleasures, and forbids adornments concerned with the body as being unlike one's own, and are more likely to lead to something other than good, but on the other hand, has seriously concerned themselves with the pleasures of learning, and adorned their soul not with alien, but with the adornments of it. Adornments of self. I think self is relating. So adornments of soul. From the other translation, that is the reason why a man should be of good cheer about his own soul, if during life he has ignored the pleasures of the body and its ornamentation as of no concern to him, and doing him more harm than good. So that's the body. So if you have good cheer, so you need to ignore what ignore pleasures of the body and ornamentation, adornment, as of no concern to him and doing him more harm than good, but has seriously concerned himself with the pleasures of learning. So concerned with pleasures of learning, adornment, this time, instead of adornment of body, adornment of soul, not with alien, but it's with its own ornaments. And so what are these? So these are adornments of the soul. So you've got sophros and sound-mindedness. Sophros. Next one, righteousness. That one is dikaios. This one, and I think this one is virility, but I think it's courage and rare. And freedom and truth, eleutheria, and aletheia. Freedom, eleutheria, and truth, aletheia. And in this way await their journey into the invisible region of Hades by being prepared to go when their allotted destiny summons. Now you, on the one hand, both Simmias and Cebes, and the rest of you, will each take that journey at some time afterwards. But on the other hand, my allotted destiny summons me even now, as a tragic poet might say, and so it is nearly the hour for me to turn towards my bath, for it truly seems better to be already bathed than drink the potion that the women may not have the trouble of washing the corpse. When he had finished saying these things, Crito said, Very well, O Socrates. What then is your last will, either to me or to them, about your children or anything else concerning you, whatever we can do in good will that would serve you the most? Just as I always say, O Crichton, nothing new, that by taking care of your own selves, you will serve yourselves and me. So, well, of Socrates. Which is at 115b. So take care of yourselves. Thus, that by taking care of your own selves, take care of your own selves. You will serve yourselves and me, and those that are mine, and those that are yours, doing whatever you do in goodwill. Even if you do not agree with me now, doing whatever you do in goodwill, doing whatever you do in goodwill. Charity. Or is that where charity comes from? Latin caritas, caros, what's derived from it? Is there any Greek? There we go, Greek. Or even care. Careful from this. Charis. From Cairo, to be happy. From beauty, elegance, charm, grace. This one's what? Beauty, elegance, charm, grace. And then this is where goodwill comes in, because it says the voluntary act of goodwill, gratitude, thanks, influence, force, delight. Okay. So doing whatever you do in goodwill, even if you do not agree with me now, whereas on the other hand, if you fail to care for your own selves, or if fail to care for yourself, and are unwilling to live following the tracks, as it were, concerning what we have discussed now and on previous occasions, you will achieve nothing of much value. Will achieve nothing of much value. No matter how much or how strongly you agree with me at this moment, we shall certainly be eager to do this, as you say, but in what way shall we bury you? In any way you may wish, if indeed you can catch me and not fly away from you. Laughing quietly, but at the same time also looking at us, he said, I do not persuade Crito, O people, that I am this Socrates who is discoursing with you now, and ordering each thing that I say. But he believes me to be that thing, which soon he will later see as a corpse, and so he asks how he shall bury me. Right. So Socrates is not identifying with the body. Not identifying with the body, which will become a corpse. He doesn't mind worrying about burial or how corpse will be treated. And this is a woman I see. But I have for a long time made the drawn out logos that after I drink the potion, then I shall no longer remain with you, but I will go far away into a certain truly blessed destiny of the good spirits. He seems to think that I have said this in a vain attempt of encouraging you and myself also. Then swear an oath to Crito on my behalf, the opposite to the one which was sworn to the judges. For on the one hand, Crito swore that I would surely stay, but you, on the other hand, must swear that I will surely not remain after I die, but that I shall go far away, in order that Crito may bear it easily, and seeing my body either being burned or buried will not be perturbed on my behalf, as if I were suffering terribly, that he may not say at the funeral that he is either laying out or carrying out or burying Socrates. For you know well, O good friend Crito, that to express oneself incorrectly not only entails striking a false note, but this also infects our soul with certain ignobility. I'm just wondering about this bit here where then swear an oath to Crito on my behalf. I don't know the story of what happened in the trial of the judges, so I'm wondering if the other translation said anything about that. So in the other translation, we shall be eager to follow your advice, said Crito, but how shall we bury you? In any way you like, said Socrates, if you can catch me and I do not escape you. And laughing quietly, looking at us, he said, I do not convince Crito that I am this Socrates talking to you here, and ordering all I say, but he thinks that I am the thing which he will soon be looking at, as a corpse, and so he asks how he shall bury me. I have been saying for some time, and at some length, that after I have drunk the poison, I shall no longer be with you, but will leave you to go and enjoy some good fortunes of the blessed. But it seems that I have said all this to him in vain, in attempts to reassure you and myself too. Give a pledge to Crito on my behalf, he said, the opposite pledge to that he gave the jury. He pledged that I would stay. You must pledge that I will not stay after I die, but that I shall go away, so that Crito will bear it more easily, etc. So it's the opposite pledge. Give a pledge to Crito on my behalf, he said, the opposite pledge to that he gave the jury. So what pledge did Crito give the jury? It's not clear. Maybe it's in another dialogue. And in this translation, it's oath. And this point was also nice, for you know well, O good friend Crito, that to express oneself incorrectly not only entails striking a false note, but this also infects our souls with a certain ignobility. Therefore you must be of good cheer, and say you are burying my body, and bury it in the way that appears to be most customary, and in such a way that may appear dear to you. Upon saying that, he got up and went to another room so as to take his bath, and Crito followed him, but he told us to wait for him. So we waited, talking among ourselves about what had been said, and examining it well, but then again at other times letting pass through feelings about the misfortune which had befallen us. We all felt absolutely just as if we had been deprived of a father, to be dispersed as orphans for the rest of our lives. But after he had washed, the women of his household arrived, and his children were brought to him, since 2 of his sons were small, but another one was older. He spoke to them in front of Crito, and gave what instructions he wished. Then, on the one hand, he sent the women and children away, and on the other hand, he himself came to us. It was now close to sunset, for he had stayed inside for a long time. Thus he came, refreshed from his bath, and after that not much was said. When the servant of the 11 came and stood by him and said, O Socrates, I shall not reproach you as I reproach the others, for they get angry with me and curse me when I announce to them it is time to drink the potion, obeying the orders of my superiors. But during the time you have been in this place, I have come to know you in other ways, as being the noblest, the gentlest, and the best man who has ever come here. So truly now also, I know well that since you recognize those responsible, you will not be angry at me, but at them. For now, you know what message I bring. Farewell, and try to endure what you must as easily as possible. All this time he was weeping, then he turned and went away. And Socrates looked up at him and said, Fare you well also, and we shall do this, just as you bid. And at the same time Socrates turned to us and said, How courteous the man is, and during my whole time here he has come in and conversed with me at different times, and he was the most agreeable of people. And how nobly he now weeps for me. Come then, O Crito, let us truly be persuaded by him, and let someone bring the potion, if it is prepared. But if it is not, let the man prepare it. But, O Socrates, I at least think the sun is still shining upon the hills, and has not yet set. And at the same time, I know that others drink quite a long time after they have received the message, eating and drinking quite a bit, and some of them which indeed would have intimacy with their loved ones. So do not hurry, for there is still time. Naturally indeed, O Crito, for those people to do those things, naturally indeed, O Crito, for those people to do these things which you mention, for they believe that they derive some benefit from doing these things. But, as far as I am concerned, these things do not come naturally for me to do, for neither do I expect any benefit from drinking the potion a little later, other than to indeed become ridiculous in my own eyes by clinging to life and be sparing of it when there is none still left. So do as I ask of you, and do not act in some other way. And hearing this, Crito nodded to the boy who was standing near, and the boy went out, and after a time came back with the man who was to administer the potion, carrying the preparation in a cup. Then, when Socrates saw the man, he said, "Well, O good man, since you are knowledgeable in these matters, what must I do?" "Nothing other than drinking it and walking around until you should feel a heaviness in your legs. At that time lie down, and in this way it will act of itself." And at the same time he offered the cup to Socrates, who took it most graciously, O Echecrates, without a tremor, nor any change of feature, or of colour, or of expression, but looking under his eyebrows at the man, just like a bull, in his usual habit, he asked, "What do you say about pouring a libation from this drink? It is allowed or not?" "O Socrates, we prepare as much as we believe the measure that is to be drunk." "I understand. So it is allowed, spillage, and indeed one must surely say a prayer to the gods that the migration from here to there may be fortunate. Surely then this is also what I pray, and may it be in this way." And at the same time that he was saying this, he was holding it out in an offering, and then he drained it graciously, and very well content. And most of us had been able not to weep and to restrain ourselves reasonably well, at least up until then. But as we saw him drinking and having drunk it, we could no longer do so, but my own tears indeed kept gushing out in force, so that covering up, I entirely forgot myself, for I was indeed truly not weeping for that man, but I was weeping for my misfortune in being deprived of such a virile or courageous companion. But even before me, since Crito was not able to restrain his tears, and at that time went outside. But even before this time, Apollodorus had not ceased from crying, and truly, at this very moment, with his loud roaring lamentations and his perturbation, no one whatsoever of these present could not break down, except from Socrates himself. Then at that time he himself said, "What are you doing, O marvellous fellows? This certainly not the last reason, for the sake of which I sent away the women, in order that they may not behave in such a discordant way. For I have also heard that one should die in silence and peace. So be quiet and take control and master yourselves." And hearing his words made us all ashamed, and we checked our tears. Then he walked around, and when he said his legs were heavy, he lay on his back. But thus was the advice of the man, and at the same time the man who gave him the potion, after some time laid his hands on him, testing his feet and legs, and then pressing hard upon his foot, asked if he felt it, to which he responded that he did not. And after this he tested his calves again, and in this way reaching the upper body, showed us that it was also cold and stiff, and laying his hands on him again also said that when it reached his heart, at that time he would be gone. Then by the time that the cold was getting near to the abdomen of him, he uncovered his head, for he had it covered, saying, which was truly the last thing he uttered, O Crito, we owe a cock to Asclepius, therefore pay it back, and do not neglect to do it. This then shall be done, but see if there is anything else you have to say. To this question he made no further reply, but after a few moments he moved, and the man uncovered him, and his eyes were fixed. Then, seeing this, Crito closed his mouth and his eyes. Such was the end, O Echecrates, of our companion, a courageous person, as we should say, who was, of all those which we have known, both now and then, the best, and the most mindful, and the most righteous.